let me stop and say, some of you don't know this perhaps about me, but I have a bachelor's degree in religion, not in business. This is important to say because we're about to go to church. Sticking with the spirit of what would Jesus do, we actually did dig through the Bible to find passages that lent themselves to the current border practice of separating migrant children from their parents. And I want to begin with Matthew chapter 19, verse 14. But Jesus said, "Suffer little children and forbid them not to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven." Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 22, verse 3. "Thus saith the Lord, execute ye judgment and righteousness, and deliver the spoiled out of the hand of the oppressor, and do no wrong, do no violence to the stranger, the fatherless, nor the widow, neither shed innocent blood in his place." All right, let's go to Matthew chapter 26, verse 42. "For I was hungered, and ye gave me no meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me not in. Naked, and ye clothed me not. Sick, and in prison, and ye visited me not." Not finished yet. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 10. "Woe unto them that decree unrighteousness decrees, and that write grievousness which they have prescribed, to turn aside the needy from judgment, and to take away the right from the poor of my people, that widows may be their prey, and that they may rob the fatherless." And I'm not done yet. Let's go to Matthew chapter 25 again, this time verse 40. "And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of my brethren, ye have done it unto me." That's just a small sampling of what's in the Bible. Joining us now is Father James Martin. He is a Jesuit priest. He is the editor-at-large of the Jesuit magazine, America. Father, we don't do this a lot on this show. I don't do a lot of biblical readings. I don't do a lot of verse. I've studied verse, but I don't do that. But the administration has forced this discussion upon us because they have said it's the biblical thing to do. I don't think there is a Christian, a Muslim, or a Jew in this country who can find me in their holy book references that suggest that that is appropriate.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think what they're doing is it's called proof texting, which is you take a verse of the Gospels or the Old Testament out of context and just sort of throw it at people, almost weaponizing the Gospels and the Bible. And, you know, the entire Bible, and certainly if we're talking about a Christian point of view, is in favor of the poor, the marginalized, and those who are struggling, as you pointed out in Matthew 25. And in fact, Jesus' litmus test for whether or not you get into heaven is how you treated poor and struggling people and the stranger. He was very clear about that. So it's very clear. And their use of it, I thought, was disgraceful.
And I would just as soon we not have that conversation in a biblical context, because we have other contexts. We have other good political contexts into which we can have them, including the fact that we've signed on to international agreements about the way we treat refugees. But you bring up an important point. If you are going to take a holy book and weaponize it, then you've got to be prepared to have the other side of that argument. You got to be able. I do not enjoy taking 5 verses out of the Bible and quoting it out of context, because if people read the Bible or the Quran, they should read it in context.
Yeah, and I think what we should avoid is kind of getting into this back and forth, as you're suggesting. The overall spirit of the Bible, right, is caring for the poor and being loving and compassionate and merciful. And I cannot imagine anyone in his or her right mind thinking that Jesus would approve of ripping children from their parents. Now, I mean, you know, it goes against pretty much the entire Bible and the ethos of Jesus, and it's deeply unchristian.
And in fact, many religious groups, who, by the way, may otherwise support Donald Trump and his views on other matters, have said, this is a bridge too far for us.
Yeah, it's about time. And also, Attorney General Sessions' reference to Romans 13, we should be clear, in terms of following the law, has been used to support slavery and also was used by the Nazis as well. And so you cannot take these Bible verses out of context and just throw them about like that. It's very dangerous.
Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.